Build Back Better goes to Gaza. Joe Biden's Build Back Better, lack of, infrastructure plan has gone global. At the cost of roughly $320 million, the United States Army Corps of Engineers has been tasked to build a pontoon pier in Gaza to facilitate the more efficient flow of humanitarian goods from the outside world to Gaza. That pier has broken apart, floated away from the Gaza shoreline, and some reports indicate that it has sank. This is a clear embarrassment for the administration as well as the United States in a region where being seen as weak and incompetent invites greater challenge. How did we get here? Why is Biden doing this? What will the region do in response? These are the questions that will be addressed in this post. The truth about Israel-Gaza relations. Gaza has been left alone by Israel since 2005, when the last Israeli soldier departed. All Israeli settlements were forcibly removed by the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, preceding that exodus of Israeli forces. A year thereafter, in 2006, the Palestinian Arabs living in Gaza were allowed to host democratic elections. A terror organization, Hamas, won that election. Some argue it was rigged. It probably was, given the way that the totalitarian Islamist organization operates. For its part, Hamas has listed the destruction of Israel through jihad as the key tenet of its organization. Despite this, Hamas rose to power. The international community, notably the U.S. leader at the time, President George W. Bush, hailed the rise of Hamas as a positive step for the much ballyhooed freedom agenda in the Middle East. Despite Hamas's obvious existential antipathy toward Israel, the Jewish democracy allowed for the rise of Hamas in Gaza. Interestingly, many observers, some in Israeli elite circles and throughout the West, argued that Hamas was a step up from the other major political party in the Palestinian territories, Fatah, descended from Yasser Arafat's Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. The belief among most elites, and this belief explains all the many missteps by the West in the Mideast, was that Hamas, being an Islamist organization, represented the majority will of the people in the region and was somehow less corrupt than the old Fatah party. Over time, it was assumed, because Hamas had popular support, some form of normalization would occur in Gaza where Hamas would rule. This was not to be. Hamas is a terrorist group that is entirely funded by foreign powers inimical to Israel's existence, notably Iran, and it operates as a criminal gang does. What's more, as soon as Hamas won its election in 2006, it never hosted another election in Gaza again. That means for the last 17 years, there's only been one democratic election in Gaza. Oh, and the corruption of Hamas is legendary, but that's another story. Anyway, Israel left Gaza alone throughout this time. They'd fortified their positions on the other side of the border with Hamas-led Gaza, but did little to antagonize them. That is until it was revealed that Hamas was receiving weapons shipments from Iran as well as moving terrorists all around the region via its port along the eastern Mediterranean. Thus, Israel instituted a comprehensive blockade of Gaza back in 2010. Some degree of a blockade has continued since that time. Israel did this as a self-defense move. By depriving Hamas of easy access to the sea, Israel was limiting the free movement of terrorists and weapons throughout the region that only would have harmed Israelis. Even with the blockade, Israel's government found itself more threatened by Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon and took on a mowing the grass approach to dealing with Hamas in Gaza. Israel's government essentially bribed Hamas to not make too much trouble for them so that the IDF could focus on the Hezbollah threat to the north. Whenever it looked as though Hamas was stepping out of line, IDF forces would bombard Hamas targets in Gaza, setting them back, hence mowing the lawn. As it turned out, Hamas was using the window that Israel's policies had allowed to enhance their capabilities and prepare for what ultimately became the October 7th terrorist attacks that led to 1,200 Israeli dead and the subsequent IDF ground war upon Gaza. Israel is crushing Hamas despite what its critics say. Have they killed the leadership of Hamas? Some, yes. The Israeli war has not gone perfectly as planned, but the Israelis are doing considerable damage to Hamas. One of the things that has helped Israel keep Hamas contained has been the fact that Hamas has been bottled up in Gaza. They've had little access to the sea since the Israeli Navy deprived them of their access to the Eastern Med. Biden's army can't build a simple pontoon bridge. Enter President Joe Biden and his absolutely goofy temporary pier. Biden, on top of withholding vital intelligence to Israel and threatening to withhold congressionally approved lethal aid, something that Democrats in Congress impeached former President Donald J. Trump for supposedly doing to Ukraine in 2019, Biden is now attempting to render assistance to Hamas by ordering the United States Army Corps of Engineers to build a temporary pier in Gaza. Biden says it's for ensuring humanitarian aid from the West reaches the people of Gaza rather than having to go through the IDF. Biden was responding to reports that insufficient amounts of aid were getting through to the Palestinian people suffering under the weight of Israel's invasion of Gaza following October 7th. In reality, the aid was being stopped by jealous Hamas terrorists who wanted to up the ante of the suffering in Gaza so that fools like Biden in the West would fall for Hamas's claims that Israel was conducting a genocide. President Biden also thinks he's winning over the Muslim world, something that I document in my book, The Shadow War, Iran's Quest for Supremacy, as being a primary motivation for every Democratic Party president going back to Jimmy Carter. And as every failed Democratic Party outreach to the Islamists has proven, Biden's recent decision to build a pier linking Gaza with the wider world will not work in securing favorable treatment from the Islamists who are spiritually opposed to the existence of the United States and its way of life. To the rest of the region, by not standing with our traditional allies, Israel, Biden makes the Americans look weak. Looking weak in the Middle East, as Lee Smith has shown in his magnificent 2011 book, The Strong Horse, Power, Politics, and the Clash of Civilizations, that is a surefire way to lose one's position in the Middle East. Now the beloved pier has broken apart and floated away from the shore where the U.S. Army was building it. Recent videos from the region show the pier not only drifting back to the sea, a clear omen, if you ask me, that this was an awful idea, but it further highlights incompetence on the part of the supposed global superpower. Being perceived as weak in the Middle East is bad enough for the United States, but it further highlights incompetence on the part of the supposed global superpower. It used to be that American engineering, notably in the post-World War II era, was second to none. Major American infrastructure projects ranged from Egypt to Iran to Afghanistan throughout the Cold War, in a clear symbol of U.S. supremacy and technical skillcraft. The adults aren't in charge. Today, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers under President Biden can't even build a simple pontoon pier in Gaza, a region dominated by backward terrorists. Only in Joe Biden's America would this poignant image of American impotence and incompetence be on display for the world to see and for Washington to remain woefully aloof and indifferent to the whole pathetic affair. This won't preserve the peace or stop a humanitarian crisis from unfolding. It merely makes the U.S. Army elements on the beach easy targets for Hamas and risks alienating a key ally in the region, Israel, that has worked so hard to contain Hamas in Gaza. There are no adults in charge in Washington. It shows.